The early morning sun barely touched the horizon, casting a pale golden light across the sand and surf of Coronado, California. The Naval Special Warfare Training Center was alive with the sounds of boots crunching on gravel, instructors' whistles slicing through the cold, and the low hum of anticipation from recruits who knew they were about to be tested in ways most civilians could not imagine. Among the throng of rugged men, the newcomers, one figure moved with a quiet intensity that drew subtle, curious glances. Lena Torres, 27 years old, was stepping into a world that had rarely seen someone like her. Her eyes were sharp, her posture straight, yet a subtle tension clung to her movements. She wasn't the tallest, or the broadest, or the loudest, qualities that seemed to dominate the ranks of the men surrounding her. But there was something about her that demanded attention, a quiet, unwavering purpose, an inner fire that no amount of mocking or doubt could extinguish. Her tattoo, visible on her forearm, attracted the first of many sideways glances. A majestic eagle clutched an anchor in its talons, wings spread wide as if bracing itself against an invisible storm. The ink gleamed faintly under the dim morning light. Some recruits whispered jokes, others sneered outright. "Look at that," one muttered to another. "Wannabe SEAL ink." Another laughed quietly, adding, "Bet she's going to quit before the first week's even over." Lena didn't respond. She had learned long ago that words were weapons, but only the weak used them. She focused her gaze on the surf, where the cold Pacific Ocean foamed and churned. The first drill whistle blew, and without hesitation, she dropped to the sand and began running alongside the men, her feet sinking into the wet grains with each determined step. The ocean loomed ahead, a wall of icy blue that promised discomfort, exhaustion, and relentless challenge. As they reached the shoreline, the instructors' shouts grew louder. "Into the water, now!" Their voices carried the authority of years of experience, breaking down any hesitation. Lena waded into the surf, muscles trembling against the icy cold. Water crashed over her shoulders, pulling at her legs, numbing her fingers. The men around her gasped and cursed, some faltering at the first plunge. But Lena pressed forward, the tattoo on her arm catching a brief glint of sunlight as she emerged from a crashing wave, a small symbol of defiance amidst the chaos. The first day was designed to weed out the uncertain, and many of her fellow recruits were already showing cracks in their resolve. Lena's own body ached, her muscles screamed, and every breath burned like fire, but her mind remained focused. Every step, every stroke through the surf was driven by a silent promise. She remembered the reason she had come here. Her brother, Chief Miguel Torres, a decorated Navy SEAL, had been killed during a covert mission. At his gravesite, she had made a vow. "I'll carry your mission. I'll finish what you started." No one at the training center knew this. To them, she was simply the quiet woman with the tattoo, an outsider in a world dominated by men who had been conditioned to push past every limit. Some laughed at her quietly behind her back, whispering that she would fail. Others openly mocked her, pointing to the tattoo and sneering. But Lena didn't flinch. She had faced fear before, in combat zones, in the back of a helicopter under fire, in the sterile chaos of military hospitals, where life and death balanced on the edge of a scalpel. This was simply another battlefield. By mid-morning, the recruits were exhausted, drenched in salt water, in sand clinging to every inch of their bodies. The instructors marched them across the beach, testing endurance, resilience, and teamwork. Lena stumbled only once, her legs slipping on a hidden rock beneath the foam, but she caught herself and continued without pause. Her tattoo brushed against the sand, smudged with grit, yet it remained unbroken, a mirror of the resolve in her heart. During a brief rest, a few of the men huddled together, exchanging quiet commentary. "She's got guts," one admitted, almost begrudgingly. Another scoffed. Guts don't mean she'll survive Hell Week. Lena overheard snippets, but said nothing. She was past the point of needing validation. Every breath, every heartbeat, every aching muscle was a testament to the promise she carried, a promise that could not be mocked away. Later that afternoon, the recruits were assigned to carry heavy boats up the sand dunes, their shoulders straining under the weight, their hands raw and blistered. Lena struggled with the weight at first, but found a rhythm, each step measured and determined. Around her, some men grumbled, some cursed, and a few dropped to their knees. She gritted her teeth and kept moving. The tattoo on her arm seemed to vibrate with purpose, a silent beacon reminding her of why she was here. When the day finally ended, Lena collapsed near the edge of the dunes, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon where the sun dipped closer to the ocean. The men around her were equally exhausted, some nursing minor injuries, others slumped in quiet despair. A few looked at her with newfound curiosity, the earlier laughter replaced by a cautious acknowledgement. She didn't smile. She simply exhaled, allowing herself a brief moment of rest before the next challenge began. That night, in the dim light of the barracks, Lena traced her tattoo with tired fingers. Memories flooded back, her brother's laughter, his steady voice during long missions, the grief of his final deployment. She whispered his name softly, vowing again that she would honor him through every grueling test that awaited. The sound of waves crashing outside was a lullaby and a reminder. The ocean had tested her today, and she had endured. Tomorrow, the challenge would only grow. By the time the first stars appeared in the sky, Lena was already preparing for sleep, muscles aching, skin raw from salt and sand, heart pounding with anticipation and resolve. She knew the other recruits were already plotting ways to outlast her, to challenge her at every turn. But she was ready. She was not here to fit in, to please anyone, or to win their approval. She was here to finish what her brother could not, and no joke, whisper, or mocking glance would stop her. And so, as the night deepened and the wind carried the faint scent of the ocean into the barracks, Lena Torres lay awake for a few more moments, staring at the ceiling, fingers brushing the eagle and anchor tattoo on her forearm. It was more than ink. It was a vow, a memory, and a promise of endurance. The recruits around her had laughed at it that morning, but by the end of the first day, even they began to sense something undeniable. Lena Torres had arrived, and she was not going anywhere. The sun would rise again, bringing more trials, more mocking words, more exhaustion, and more pain. But Lena would rise with it, unbroken, unwavering, and relentless. The outsider's laughter would fade, and in its place, something far stronger would emerge. Respect, earned in the harshest crucible known to man. The journey had just begun, and Lena Torres was ready to face it head-on. The second day of SEAL training arrived like a thunderstorm. The recruits, already exhausted from the relentless surf and sand drills, gathered in the early morning darkness, their breath visible in the cold air. Lena Torres stepped into formation with the others, the chill biting at her skin. Her tattoo, still faintly smudged from yesterday's salt and sand, caught the first glimmers of dawn light. Some of the men whispered again, smirking at her forearm. "Still here, huh?" One muttered. "Wonder how long she'll last before crying in the surf." Lena ignored the comment, focusing instead on the whistle that would dictate her next move. Hell Week had only begun, and the instructors wasted no time escalating the intensity. The first drill of the morning was a brutal test of teamwork and endurance. The recruits were instructed to carry fully loaded assault boats across a 3-mile stretch of dunes, through sand that burned their feet and under a sun that had barely risen. Lena gritted her teeth and adjusted her grip on the wooden beam, feeling the weight dig into her shoulders. Every step was agony, but she refused to let it show. Behind her, one of the men snickered, shaking his head. "She's going to fall behind in 5 minutes," he whispered to his friend. Another nodded. "Bet she drops the boat and runs for the bell." The bell, the dreaded symbol of quitting. Every recruit knew that ringing it meant surrender, and surrender was taboo in this crucible. Lena had no intention of giving anyone that satisfaction. As the group trudged up the first dune, sweat stinging their eyes, Lena noticed the strain on a few of the taller men who had mocked her just moments before. One slipped in the sand, grunting as the boat tilted dangerously. Lena shifted her weight without hesitation, stabilizing the load and ensuring the team didn't falter. A quiet murmur rippled through the group. She wasn't just surviving, she was contributing, sometimes in ways they hadn't anticipated. By midday, the sun was high, and the sand had turned almost white under its intensity. Lena's arms ached, blisters forming on her palms, yet she refused to let the pain show. The men around her, some previously mocking, began to steal glances at her. Her tattoo, once the source of ridicule, now seemed almost defiant, an emblem of persistence. Every grunt, every shift of weight, every strategic adjustment she made silently shouted, "I belong here." During a brief water break, Lena caught snippets of conversation. "She's tougher than she looks," one recruit admitted quietly, almost under his breath. Another muttered, "Yeah, but she's still a woman. Can she really survive this week?" Lena's jaw tightened. She knew some would never believe she could last. But she also knew that this was exactly the crucible her brother had wanted her to endure. To honor him, she had to prove, not to them, but to herself, that nothing could break her resolve. The afternoon brought a series of underwater drills designed to test breath control, composure, and mental fortitude. The recruits had to dive into the frigid Pacific, swim under waves, and surface only at precise intervals. Panic often took hold of those who were unprepared, and instructors watched intently, marking who could maintain control and who would falter. Lena's teeth chattered as she plunged beneath the waves, but her body moved with precise rhythm. She held her breath, focusing on nothing but the rhythm of her movements and the weight of her vow. A man next to her began flailing, disoriented by the cold and the chaos. Instinctively, Lena reached out, steadying him and guiding him back toward the surface. The instructor's whistles shrieked, but Lena remained calm. Her fellow recruits were stunned. The girl they had mocked moments earlier was now saving one of them from panic. Her tattoo, gleaming under the water as she pulled him along, no longer seemed a joke. It was a symbol of reliability, courage, and quiet authority. By evening, the recruits were ordered into mud-crawling exercises. The ground was a thick, suffocating mix of sand and muck. Every inch of their bodies was smeared with filth, sweat, and salt water. Lena's uniform clung to her like a second skin, and her muscles screamed with exhaustion. The men who had mocked her tattoo that morning were now dragging themselves alongside her, keeping pace only because her determination set the tempo. She whispered no words, but her presence became a rhythm they couldn't ignore. The instructors introduced the first psychological test that evening, a series of impossible commands under extreme fatigue. Recruits were yelled at, berated, and pushed beyond their limits. Many broke down, shouting, cursing, or collapsing. Lena felt her own body teeter on the edge of surrender, but she focused on her brother's memory. Miguel's words echoed in her mind. Pain is temporary. Resolve is forever. She clenched her fists, kept her head high, and moved forward, ignoring the sting in her lungs and the agony in her joints. As night fell, the recruits returned to the barracks, drenched, exhausted, and covered in sand. Lena sat quietly in the corner, unwrapping her blisters and tracing the eagle and anchor tattoo with tired fingers. Her mind replayed the day, the cold ocean, the grueling dunes, the struggling teammates she had steadied, the whispers and sneers. All of it, the tattoo was no longer a target for mockery. It was a silent witness to her perseverance, a beacon that told her she was doing exactly what she came to do. Some of the men who had mocked her approached cautiously, offering small words of acknowledgement. You really kept up out there," one said, almost embarrassed. Lena nodded once, not smiling, not seeking praise. She had survived their mockery, their doubts, and the punishing drills. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. It always did, but she had endured this first. True test with quiet dignity and unwavering determination. Later, as the barracks grew quiet and the recruits drifted into restless sleep, Lena stared at the ceiling, tracing her tattoo again. She whispered her brother's name softly, a private prayer and a vow renewed. Every bruise, every blister, every mocking word was a test, and she had passed. Her mind replayed the events of the day, analyzing every move, every decision. The ocean had tried to break her, the sand had tried to slow her, and the men had tried to dismiss her. Yet here she remained, upright, unbroken, and resolute. By the time the first stars twinkled outside the barracks windows, Lena had made a silent promise to herself. No matter what Hell Week throws at me, no matter how much pain, fear, or ridicule comes my way, I will not quit. I will survive. I will endure. And I will honor Miguel. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her spirit was unyielding. The mockery had begun to fade, replaced by something subtler: curiosity, hesitation, and perhaps just a flicker of respect. The instructors, ever watchful, noted her resilience, marking her as someone who might not just survive Hell Week, but redefine it for those around her. As Lena finally closed her eyes that night, the ocean's waves whispered against the shore outside, a lullaby and a challenge at once. She had survived the day, but the week had only begun. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the aching muscles and the exhaustion, a quiet, fierce fire burned. The tattoo was no longer just ink. It was a testament to her brother, to her vow, and to the fact that Lena Torres had arrived in a world that did not yet understand the depth of her courage. Tomorrow, the real battle would continue, and Lena would face it head-on, unafraid, unstoppable, and unwavering. The night was still, but Lena Torres lay awake, her eyes tracing the faint lines of her eagle and anchor tattoo on her forearm. To the recruits around her, it was just ink, something to mock or dismiss. To Lena, it was a story, a memory, and a promise, all rolled into one. The grueling days at SEAL training had tested her body and her will, but the real fire burned inside her mind. Every ache, every pang of fatigue, every whispered joke from her peers reverberated against the memory she carried like armor. Her brother, Chief Miguel Torres. Miguel had been more than family. He had been a hero in ways Lena could barely comprehend. She remembered the night he left for his final mission, the weight of duty etched into his face, and the quiet determination that marked his every movement. He had been in Navy SEAL trained to survive the unimaginable, to endure what others could not. But even the strongest could fall. Miguel had not returned. The message had come in the sterile voice of a commanding officer, the words hollow yet final. "We regret to inform you." He did not survive the mission. Grief had followed her like a shadow, dark and unrelenting. Yet, amidst the pain, a spark of determination had ignited. She had visited his grave in the early morning light, alone except for the whispers of the wind through the cypress trees. Standing there, she had pressed her palm to the cold stone and whispered a vow she would never break. "I will finish what you started. I will carry your mission. I will make you proud." The eagle and anchor tattoo had been inked weeks later, a permanent reminder of that promise, covering a scar on her forearm from an earlier training accident. It wasn't about decoration. It wasn't about vanity. It was about purpose, endurance, and memory. As Lena traced the tattoo in the dim barracks light, memories of Afghanistan flooded back. She had served as a combat medic for 2 years, running into chaos where others ran away, treating wounded soldiers while helicopters lifted the critically injured into the sky. The battlefield had a rhythm, a terrifying, unforgiving rhythm, and she had learned to survive within it. Her brother had been there, sometimes guiding her from afar, always silently demanding she rise to her full potential. In the quiet of the night, Lena could hear the distant crash of waves against the shore, a constant reminder of the sea she had faced earlier in the day. Each wave was a test, each tide a challenge, and she had endured both. The tattoo on her arm, now smudged from mud, sweat, and seawater, glinted faintly in the darkness, reflecting not arrogance, but resilience. Her thoughts wandered back to Hell Week, to the laughter of the men who had doubted her. "Wannabe sealing," one had said. "Bet she quits before sunrise," another had whispered. Lena's chest tightened at the memory. They didn't know the half of it. They didn't know the weight she carried, the promise she had made, or the battles she had survived long before stepping into Coronado's training grounds. To them, this was a contest of strength. To Lena, it was a testament of heart, memory, and honor. Sleep did not come easily. Her body ached from the previous day's drills, her hands blistered, her legs screaming from the dunes, the boats, the water, and the mud. Yet Lena lay awake, mentally preparing herself for what the next day would bring. She reviewed every drill, every command, every procedure she had learned. She visualized the grueling missions ahead, the water runs, the boat carries, the underwater tests, and the obstacle courses. She visualized herself enduring, excelling, leading, and surviving. She also remembered her brother's voice, calm and steady, a guiding light in her darkest moments. "Pain means you're still in the fight. Don't waste it." Those words echoed now, stronger than the fatigue and the cold. She repeated them silently, a mantra she would carry through each waking moment of the training to come. By the early hours, Lena finally allowed herself a moment of reflection. She considered the irony. The tattoo that had once drawn ridicule was now her anchor, a reminder that the ridicule itself was meaningless compared to the promise she had made. The men in her training unit had no context, no understanding of the sacrifices, battles, and grief that had led her here. They judged her based on surface appearances, ink, gender, and perceived weakness. But Lena knew the truth. Strength was forged through hardship, not assumption, and her life had been an endless crucible long before Coronado. The first few days of training had already tested her physically, but the psychological toll was just as punishing. Lena replayed every glance, every whispered insult, every doubt thrown in her path. She felt their judgment as keenly as she felt her own exhaustion. And yet, each insult, each skeptical stare, each joke only steeled her resolve further. The tattoo, etched over a scar and bathed in her brother's memory, was now a symbol of endurance, reminding her of everything she had overcome and everything she still had to do. As dawn approached, Lena finally sat upright, her fingers lingering over the inked eagle and anchor. The day ahead promised more trials, more exhaustion, and more ridicule. She would face freezing water, grueling exercises, and perhaps the sneers of men who could not understand her determination. And yet, as she flexed her fingers, feeling the ache and strain of her muscles, she smiled faintly to herself. She was ready. She had endured worse than this. She had survived loss, grief, and battlefield chaos. Coronado, the sea, the dunes, and the instructor's whistles were no match for the fire that burned inside her. When the morning whistle finally blew, calling the recruits to the surf once again, Lena rose without hesitation. Her forearm, tattoo gleaming faintly in the dawn light, was a statement to herself and to the world. She would endure. She would survive. And she would honor the promise she had made at her brother's grave. The recruits filed into formation, some sneering, some skeptical, and a few quietly curious about the resolve of the woman who refused to break. Lena ignored them all. She didn't need their approval, their acknowledgement, or their understanding. Her mission was internal, personal, sacred. Every grunt, every step, every wave, and every drop of sweat would be her testament. By the time they reached the surf, Lena was focused, resolute, and calm. The freezing waves hit her chest like a wall of ice, and she allowed herself a fleeting smile. The first true test of the day awaited, and she would face it with the memory of Miguel, the vow of her tattoo, and the unshakable knowledge that she was unbreakable. The men around her whispered again, some quietly, some not so quietly, but Lena's mind was elsewhere. Their laughter and doubt were meaningless. She had survived worse. She had endured the battlefield, loss, and personal grief that could crush ordinary men. This was just another challenge, one she would meet with strength, intelligence, and determination. The eagle and anchor tattoo, once mocked, had become her guide. It reminded her of what mattered: honor, perseverance, and the promise she had made. Each stroke of the wave against her body felt like a test, and each breath she took was a victory. Lena Torres was no longer the outsider. She was a force, quiet, determined, and relentless, ready to carve her place among the men who doubted her, and to prove, silently but unmistakably, that strength transcends appearance, gender, and expectation. The morning sun had barely begun to creep over the horizon when Lena Torres awoke to the harsh, grating whistle of the instructors. Her body screamed in protest. Every muscle ached. Her hands were blistered and raw from the previous day's drills, and her legs threatened to buckle under even the lightest exertion. Yet, she pushed herself upright, her fingers brushing over the eagle and anchor tattoo that had become a quiet talisman of her resolve. The ink shimmered faintly in the early light, a silent witness to the promise she carried, to honor her brother, Miguel, and to survive what most could not. Today's challenge was one of endurance and mental fortitude, the infamous night swim. The Pacific Ocean, frigid and merciless, awaited them. The instructors' voices cut through the morning fog, sharp and unrelenting. Into the surf, now. The recruits moved as one, though many faltered on the edge, staring into the icy water that threatened to rob them of breath, strength, and resolve. Lena inhaled deeply, letting the cold sting her lungs as she plunged in, feeling the shock of the water tear at her body. Every stroke was agony. Her muscles burned with exhaustion, her lungs screamed for air, and the darkness beneath the waves was disorienting. The men around her struggled, some panicking, some faltering entirely. Lena pressed forward, pushing through the burning cold and fatigue. She thought of Miguel, of the promise etched on her forearm, and she whispered silently, "I will not fail. I will endure. I am unbroken." Midway through the swim, a wave caught one of the recruits, a tall, confident man who had sneered at her tattoo earlier in the week. His panicked flailing pulled him under, and instinct overrode exhaustion. Lena swam beside him, stabilizing his movements, guiding him toward the surface. The instructor's whistles shrieked, but Lena remained steady, calm. She was no longer the outsider they had mocked. She was a lifeline, an anchor in the chaos. By the time they reached shore, Lena's body trembled uncontrollably, teeth chattering and muscles spasming, but she refused to let herself collapse. The instructors barked orders to move inland, and the recruits scrambled, dragging their freezing, aching bodies across the sand. Lena's hands were numb, blisters burning like fire, but she kept pace, her focus absolute. Every step, every breath, every pulse was a testament to her resolve. The day continued with a series of brutal physical tests. Dune runs carrying heavy packs, obstacle courses that demanded upper body strength she didn't think she had, and underwater exercises that tested her endurance and breath-holding limits. Each drill pushed Lena closer to collapse, but she refused to succumb. She felt the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing down on her, threatening to force her to the bell, the ultimate symbol of surrender. Yet she clenched her fists and pressed forward, repeating Miguel's words in her mind. Pain means you're still in the fight. During a particularly grueling obstacle course, Lena's body finally began to betray her. Her vision blurred, her legs threatened to buckle, and her hands slipped on the slick metal bars. The instructors barked, some shouting at her, some observing with keen interest. "Ring the bell if you can't continue." One yelled, a challenge meant to break her spirit. A bell gleamed in the distance, a tempting escape from the torment. Lena stared at it briefly, then looked down at her forearm, tracing the eagle and anchor tattoo with trembling fingers. She whispered, "Not today. I'm still here. I'm still in the fight." With a surge of mental determination, Lena pulled herself upward, gripping the bars with renewed strength. She moved carefully but steadily, ignoring the searing pain in her muscles and the trembling in her legs. The men who had once mocked her watched in awe and disbelief. The girl with the tattoo, the outsider, was not breaking. She was not faltering. She was enduring, and her endurance demanded respect. Later in the afternoon, the recruits were ordered to carry their boats across the dunes once again. The weight heavier than before, the sun more oppressive. Sweat streamed down Lena's face, mixing with salt from the ocean and the grit of sand. Each step was excruciating. Her teammates around her stumbled, grumbled, and cursed the instructors. Some looked to her for guidance, subtly following her pace. Lena's mind was singularly focused. Keep moving, endure, survive. The tattoo on her arm felt hot under the sun, almost alive, a constant reminder of her vow and her strength. By evening, Lena reached what could only be described as the physical and mental breaking point. Her body trembled, her muscles screamed, and every joint in her body felt as though it might give out. She collapsed briefly into the sand, catching her breath, eyes fixed on the horizon. The waves lapped lazily against the shore, indifferent to the struggles of humans. She was alone in that moment, facing herself, her exhaustion, and her doubts. She could feel the pull of surrender whispering in her mind, tempting her to ring the bell and escape the torment. But Lena refused. She pressed a hand to her chest, over her heart, then traced the tattoo on her forearm. She whispered Miguel's name again and again, letting the memory of her brother, the promise she had made, and the countless battles she had already survived give her the strength to rise. Slowly, painfully, she stood upright. Every step forward felt like a victory, a defiance against the body that begged for rest and the mind that craved escape. The instructors watched with keen interest as Lena continued, pushing herself beyond what they expected of any recruit, male or female. Her determination became contagious. Other recruits, exhausted and on the verge of collapse, began to match her pace, inspired by her endurance. The laughter and sneers of the first days had faded completely, replaced by a quiet respect, fear mixed with admiration. Lena Torres, the girl they had mocked, was now their standard-bearer of grit. Night fell, and the recruits were exhausted beyond measure. Lena, now shivering violently from the day's exertions, sat near the edge of the dunes. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped blistered fingers, her eyes reflecting both pain and pride. The tattoo on her forearm, smeared with salt and sand, still gleamed faintly under the moonlight. It had witnessed her struggle, her pain, and her refusal to surrender. It had become more than ink. It was a symbol of survival, courage, and unwavering purpose. As she lay down that night, sleep came in short bursts, broken by nightmares of failing, of letting her brother's memory down, and of collapsing under the weight of expectation. Yet each time she woke, she forced herself to focus on her vow. She would endure. She would survive. And she would honor Miguel Torres, no matter the cost. The first 4 days of Hell Week had tested Lena physically, mentally, and emotionally. She had faced ridicule, fatigue, and near collapse. Yet she had survived every challenge, each one forging her into something stronger, more determined, and unyielding. The other recruits were beginning to understand. Lena was no ordinary trainee. She was an unstoppable force, defined not by her size, gender, or tattoo, but by her heart, her memory, and the promise she carried. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The waves whispered against the shore, indifferent to the human struggle. But Lena listened. She heard her brother's voice, the echo of her vow, and the quiet, insistent rhythm of her own heartbeat. She knew the trials were far from over. Hell Week still had more to demand. But she was ready. Pain would not break her. Exhaustion would not defeat her. Mockery would not shake her resolve. Lena Torres had reached the breaking point and walked past it, unbowed and unbroken. The sun rose slowly over Coronado Beach, washing the dunes and surf in a harsh, brilliant light. Lena Torres, exhausted but resolute, rose with the other recruits, muscles screaming with every movement. Hell Week had already pushed them to the brink, and yet a new energy surged within her. The first cracks of doubt in her team were beginning to shift. The men who had laughed at her tattoo, called her weak, or whispered insults behind her back were starting to see something they had never expected. Lena Torres was no longer just the woman with the tattoo. She was becoming a symbol, a force, and quietly, a leader. The day began with a series of tactical drills. Recruits were assigned small teams to navigate complex obstacles and simulate battlefield scenarios. Lena's group included several men who had openly mocked her, whispering jokes about her abilities. But as the drill commenced, the dynamic shifted. Lena's focus was precise, her instincts sharp, and her calm under pressure unshakable. When a teammate struggled to secure a heavy load, she moved silently, adjusting his grip and offering guidance without words. Her peers began to notice. Their sneers gave way to hesitant glances, their mockery replaced with a growing respect. During a particularly grueling drill, the team was instructed to carry an injured recruit across a simulated battlefield. The weight of the casualty was nearly unbearable, and many faltered under the strain. Lena's training as a combat medic kicked in instinctively. She coordinated the lifting, shifted the weight between teammates, and kept the group moving efficiently through the mud and sand. Her leadership was subtle, without ego or arrogance, yet unmistakable. The instructors, observing from a distance, nodded almost imperceptibly. They could see that Lena had begun to redefine the standards for this team, quietly, powerfully, and irreversibly. By midday, Lena's tattoo, once a target for ridicule, had taken on a new meaning. It had become a symbol of endurance, leadership, and unyielding determination. One of the recruits, a large, burly man who had sneered at her from the start, paused mid-drill and muttered under his breath, She's not just surviving. She's leading." Another nodded silently, eyes fixed on Lena's movements. The shift was subtle but undeniable. The mockery was fading, replaced by recognition, and in some cases, admiration. The afternoon drills demanded both physical strength and mental clarity. Recruits were pushed into exhausting swims, strategic maneuvers through dense vegetation, and high-intensity obstacle courses. Lena's body was already fatigued, her muscles sore from the past 4 days of relentless punishment, but she moved with precision and purpose. She assisted her teammates whenever needed, corrected mistakes without harshness, and maintained her focus under pressure. Her calm demeanor and unwavering determination began to influence the others. Where once chaos had reigned, coordination and efficiency started to emerge. During a particularly intense underwater drill, Lena remained composed while others panicked. One recruit began struggling, disoriented by the cold and current. Lena swam beside him, guiding him with quiet authority. She did not shout or scold. Her confidence spoke louder than words. The men around her, who had doubted her capacity to endure even a single day, began to take cues from her actions. She was no longer simply part of the team. She was the anchor holding it together, the quiet stabilizing force in the chaos. By the evening, the recruits returned to the barracks, exhausted but alive. Lena's presence had begun to shift the culture within her group. The men who had whispered jokes about her tattoo now approached her with tentative acknowledgement. You kept the group together today," one said quietly. Lena nodded once, eyes tired but unwavering. She didn't need to speak words of pride. Her actions had already spoken volumes. Her leadership was not about recognition, but about ensuring survival, efficiency, and success for the entire team. In the dim light of the barracks, Lena's mind replayed the day's events. She traced the tattoo on her forearm with her fingers, feeling the familiar relief and pride it brought. The eagle and anchor, once a target for ridicule, was now a symbol of resilience, not just for her, but for those around her. It represented determination, strength under pressure, and the power of silent leadership. Her brother's memory, etched into her every action, gave her the clarity and courage to push forward. Over the following days, Lena continued to earn the quiet respect of her peers. During group drills, her teammates began to follow her lead without question. She did not demand obedience or recognition. She simply acted with integrity and precision, and the others recognized her effectiveness. When navigating simulated missions or carrying out physical drills, recruits instinctively sought her guidance. The girl they had mocked had become the unspoken linchpin of the team, the one whose determination and skill ensured they could function under extreme stress. By the end of the week, a subtle but unmistakable shift had taken hold. The men who had mocked her tattoo, who had whispered that she would fail, now observed her with cautious admiration. They had seen her endure freezing swims, blistering runs, relentless obstacle courses, and mental tests that had pushed them all to their limits. Her leadership was not formalized. There were no titles or official recognition, but it was undeniable. She had become a figure of inspiration, her actions a constant reminder that true strength transcends gender, size, and preconceived notions. That evening, as Lena prepared for sleep, she reflected on the transformation she had witnessed, both within herself and in her peers. The tattoo on her arm had become a touchstone, a reminder of the promise she had made at her brother's grave and the battles she had endured. Her body was exhausted, her mind weary, but her spirit was unbroken. The shift in respect from her peers was a testament to her resilience and determination. The girl they had laughed at was no longer an outsider. She was a leader, a survivor, and a symbol of endurance. Outside, the waves crashed relentlessly against the shore, their rhythmic pounding a reminder that Hell Week was far from over. Lena traced the tattoo once more, inhaled deeply, and allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The shift had begun, and she knew that each day, each drill, each grueling test would continue to forge her into something greater, a seal, a leader, and a living testament to perseverance. As the barracks grew silent, Lena drifted into a restless sleep, muscles screaming, mind racing, but spirit resolute. The eagle and anchor tattoo gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a beacon of the journey so far and the trials still to come. The men who had mocked her earlier in the week, would never see her in the same light again. The shift was complete. Lina Torres had become more than a recruit. She had become an inspiration, a leader, and a symbol of the relentless human spirit. The day dawned cold and unforgiving. Mist curled along the shoreline, chilling the sand beneath the recruits' boots. Lina Torres, body battered from 4 days of relentless Hell Week, rose with the others, muscles stiff, joints aching, and mind already alert. Today was different. The instructors had announced the Crucible, a grueling test of endurance, teamwork, and mental fortitude designed to separate those who were truly SEAL material from those who would crumble under pressure. The recruits gathered in silence, the wind whipping their faces as the instructors detailed the mission. It would be hours of continuous physical and tactical exercises, simulated combat scenarios, and extreme water operations. Fatigue and fear hung over the group like a dense fog. Lina looked at her fellow trainees, some pale, some trembling, some resigned to failure. She brushed her fingers over her eagle and anchor tattoo, tracing the symbol of her vow. "This is what you came for," she whispered silently. "This is the moment." The first task was a grueling run across the dunes, carrying weighted packs that dug into every sore muscle. Lina set her pace at the front of her small team, guiding them without words. Her strength, endurance, and quiet confidence became their anchor. Where chaos threatened to break the group, she maintained order, adjusting grips, encouraging silently, and leading by example. The men who had once mocked her tattoo now moved in step with her, following her lead instinctively. The next stage pushed them to the ocean. The surf crashed violently against the shore, cold and unrelenting. Recruits were required to swim with full gear, dragging heavy loads through the surf, then navigate a series of underwater obstacles. Panic was inevitable for many. A young recruit panicked under the cold, his flailing threatening to capsize the group's strategy. Lina, already exhausted, lunged forward instinctively, steadying him and guiding him to the surface. Her calm authority inspired the others to maintain focus. Hours passed with no relief. The team moved through mud, sand, water, and steep dunes, each exercise testing the limits of their endurance and sanity. Lina's body screamed, but her mind remained razor-sharp. She coordinated movements, reminded teammates of breathing techniques, and kept morale from collapsing. Every time someone faltered, she instinctively provided guidance, never condescending, never boastful, simply effective. The symbolic weight of her tattoo was never far from her thoughts. The eagle and anchor, once mocked, had become a guidepost through the chaos. It reminded her why she endured, why she led, and why she refused to quit. Every drop of sweat, every burn in her muscles, every icy wave against her chest was a testament to Miguel Torres, her brother, her inspiration, her constant reminder of sacrifice and honor. At one point, the team reached a simulated casualty scenario. The task was to drag an injured recruit over a mile of dunes while maintaining formation, under constant instructor supervision. Many recruits stumbled, some panicked, others struggled to maintain the pace. Lina took command instinctively, dividing weight, giving directions calmly, and moving with a pace that pushed the team forward without breaking them. Her tattooed forearm gleamed in the harsh sunlight, a silent symbol of perseverance and leadership. The day continued with a relentless series of challenges, including rope climbs, underwater navigation, and obstacle courses designed to test both strength and teamwork. Exhaustion threatened to dominate, yet Lina pushed herself relentlessly. She refused to show weakness, knowing that any falter could demoralize the team and jeopardize their mission. The men who had laughed at her at the start of the week were now following her lead with trust, relying on her judgment, and recognizing her as the anchor that held them together. Night fell, and the final phase of the crucible began. The recruits were ordered to traverse a darkened beach, carrying boats, weapons, and supplies. The wind howled, waves crashed violently, and fatigue had pushed the men to their limits. Lena's legs burned, her hands blistered, her body numb with exhaustion, yet she pressed forward. She guided the team silently, using hand signals and small adjustments to keep them moving efficiently. Her presence was a stabilizing force, a calm eye in the storm of chaos and despair. At one point, a sudden wave knocked a recruit off balance, sending equipment and momentum tumbling. Lena reacted instantly, stabilizing him and redistributing weight to maintain progress. The instructors watched closely, impressed by her ability to maintain cohesion under extreme conditions. Her leadership had emerged organically, unforced, and undeniable. By the end of the night, the team had crossed the final stretch, battered, bruised, and utterly exhausted. Yet they had completed every task, their cohesion intact, their performance unmatched. As dawn broke, the instructors finally gathered the recruits for debriefing. Lena stood among them, body trembling from exhaustion, teeth chattering from cold, yet chest held high with pride. The men around her, who had doubted, mocked, and sneered, now regarded her with respect, awe, and quiet admiration. The tattoo on her forearm, the symbol that had sparked ridicule, now seemed to radiate authority and endurance. She had not just survived the crucible, she had anchored her team, leading them through extreme adversity with courage, precision, and heart. The lead instructor stepped forward, saluting Lena, a gesture that caught the attention of every recruit. Silence fell. The men froze, realizing that the girl they had laughed at, the one they had underestimated, had not only survived Hell Week, but had emerged as a natural leader, an example of resilience and tenacity. Whispers passed through the group. She's extraordinary. She led us. She never broke. Lena returned the salute, her body trembling from exhaustion, but her spirit unbroken. The weeks of mockery, physical torment, mental strain, and personal challenge had culminated in this moment. Her tattoo, once a source of ridicule, had become a beacon of endurance, honor, and determination. The promise to her brother, Miguel Torres, had guided every step, every breath, and every action. She had fulfilled that vow in a way no one could have predicted, and no one would ever forget. The final hours of the crucible saw the recruits awarded recognition for endurance, cohesion, and leadership. Lena's team, held together by her quiet guidance and unwavering determination, stood proudly, battered but complete. Her fellow recruits now approached her with tentative acknowledgement, the barriers of doubt and bias replaced with respect and admiration. The girl with the tattoo had transformed from outsider to anchor, from subject of mockery to symbol of unyielding courage. As the sun rose higher over Coronado Beach, Lena Torres finally allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Her body ached, her muscles burned, and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, yet her heart swelled with pride. The journey had been brutal, unforgiving, and relentless, but she had endured. She had led, she had honored her brother, and she had proven that courage, determination, and heart could overcome any obstacle, ridicule, or expectation. Lena's tattoo gleamed faintly in the morning light, a symbol that had carried her through the darkest hours. The eagle and anchor represented more than a personal promise. It symbolized resilience, leadership, and the unwavering human spirit. She had survived the crucible, and in doing so, she had rewritten what was possible in the eyes of those who had doubted her. The sun rose slowly over Coronado Beach, painting the sand and surf with a soft golden light. Lena Torres, still trembling from the exhaustion of the crucible, stood among her fellow recruits, her muscles screaming with fatigue, but her chest held high. The days of mockery, ridicule, and relentless physical torment had culminated in this moment. A tattoo on her forearm, once a source of doubt and derision, now shown as a silent emblem of endurance, courage, and honor. The instructors gathered the recruits for the final ceremony of Hell Week. Their expressions were solemn, a mixture of stern pride and professional acknowledgement. One by one, they recounted the performances of the recruits, highlighting acts of leadership, perseverance, and unwavering determination. Lena's name was mentioned multiple times, not as an afterthought, not as a token acknowledgement, but as a clear example of what it meant to embody the SEAL ethos: honor, courage, and commitment. Her peers watched, some with newfound respect, others with quiet awe. The men who had laughed at her tattoo, who had whispered doubts about her ability to survive, now observed her with admiration. Whispers passed through the ranks. She never gave up. She led us. She's extraordinary. Lena stood quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon, letting the words wash over her without a hint of arrogance. She had no need for validation. The journey itself had been reward enough. As the instructors approached her, the lead officer gave her a crisp salute. "Recruits like you," he said, his voice carrying over the sound of the waves, "are what the SEALs are built on. You didn't just survive Hell Week. You inspired your team, led under pressure, and honored the values we hold sacred. Outstanding performance." Lena returned the salute, fingers brushing the eagle and anchor tattoo, a personal acknowledgement of the vow she had carried from her brother's grave to this exact moment. The other recruits, still catching their breath, began to approach her. Some extended hands in congratulations, others offered nods of silent respect. The girl they had once mocked had become the standard-bearer of endurance and quiet leadership. She had earned not only survival, but admiration, transforming perception with her actions rather than words. Lena smiled faintly, exhausted but triumphant, knowing that the shift in respect was genuine, earned through sweat, courage, and unwavering determination. The instructors continued their debriefing, emphasizing the qualities that made SEAL: resilience, teamwork, mental toughness, and the ability to lead in chaos. Lena listened intently, feeling a sense of completion. She had not only endured the physical and mental torment of Hell Week, but had also grown into a leader, a survivor, and a symbol of inspiration for those around her. Every blister, every bruise, every wave, and every grueling obstacle had contributed to this transformation. Later, in the barracks, Lena allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The room was quiet, the air thick with exhaustion, and the lingering adrenaline of the past week. She traced the tattoo on her forearm, fingers lingering over the intricate lines of the eagle and anchor. To others, it was merely ink, but to her, it represented every challenge she had overcome, every moment she had refused to quit, and a promise she had made to Miguel. It was more than a tattoo. It was a testament to resilience, honor, and the unbreakable human spirit. Her mind wandered back to the moments that had defined her journey: the mocking laughter of peers, the freezing ocean swims, the relentless dune carries, the grueling obstacle courses, and the final trial of the crucible. Each had tested her beyond what she had imagined possible. Each had pushed her body and mind to their limits. And yet, she had endured, led, and inspired. She had become someone who could not be underestimated, someone whose presence strengthened the team, someone who had transformed perception through sheer courage and determination. The emotional weight of the week finally began to settle in. Lena felt a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet triumph. The exhaustion that had once threatened to overwhelm her was now tempered by the satisfaction of accomplishment. She had faced ridicule, physical torment, and mental pressure, and she had emerged victorious, not just surviving, but leading, inspiring, and embodying the qualities of a true SEAL. Her peers began to share stories of the week, recounting moments where Lena had guided them, steadied them, and pushed them beyond their limits. The laughter and mockery of the early days had vanished, replaced by admiration and respect. She listened quietly, letting the stories wash over her. Each account was a reminder of the impact she had made, the leadership she had demonstrated, and the bonds she had forged under extreme pressure. Later, outside the barracks, Lena stood on the dunes, gazing at the ocean. The waves crashed relentlessly against the shore, a reminder of the trials she had faced and the endurance she had demonstrated. She traced her tattoo again, feeling a deep sense of connection to her brother, Miguel. The promise she had made at his grave had guided her through every challenge, every insult, every grueling obstacle. She had honored him in the most profound way possible, through action, courage, and perseverance. As the day drew to a close, Lena realized that she had changed in ways she could not have anticipated. The physical exhaustion remained, but the mental and emotional transformation was undeniable. She had become stronger, more confident, and more aware of her capacity for endurance and leadership. The mockery of others, once a source of pain, had become irrelevant. Her strength, her actions, and her unwavering commitment had redefined her in the eyes of her peers and instructors alike. The final moments of recognition came in a quiet ceremony on the beach. The lead instructor addressed the recruits, emphasizing the qualities that had defined their journey: resilience, teamwork, mental toughness, and the courage to lead under pressure. Lena's name was mentioned again, not as a token, but as a clear example of what it meant to embody the SEAL ethos. Her peers stood in silent acknowledgement, and for the first time, Lena allowed herself a genuine smile. She had survived, led, and transformed, and in doing so, had honored the memory of her brother in a way that would never be forgotten. That night, as she lay in the barracks, Lena reflected on the journey she had completed. The tattoo on her forearm, once a source of ridicule, had become a symbol of endurance, leadership, and unwavering commitment. The lessons she had learned, the respect she had earned, and the transformation she had undergone would stay with her for the rest of her life. She had faced ridicule, fear, and extreme physical and mental challenges, and she had emerged victorious, unbroken, and stronger than ever. The journey was not over. The world beyond SEAL training would present new challenges, new obstacles, and new trials. But Lena Torres knew that she had the strength, determination, and resilience to face whatever came next. Her tattoo, her vow to Miguel, and the lessons of Hell Week had forged her into someone unstoppable, someone who could endure, lead, and inspire, no matter the odds. The sun rose over Coronado Beach one last time, casting long, golden shadows over the dunes where Lena Torres had endured the most grueling week of her life. The air was crisp and filled with the faint scent of salt from the Pacific Ocean. Today was graduation, the culmination of Hell Week, the defining moment for every recruit who had survived the relentless tests of strength, endurance, and character. For Lena, it was more than that. It was the final testament to a journey marked by resilience, courage, and an unbroken vow. As the recruits assembled, their bodies battered, faces streaked with sweat and sand, Lena stood among them. Her tattoo, the eagle and anchor on her forearm, gleamed faintly in the morning light, a quiet symbol of the journey she had completed. What had once drawn ridicule was now a mark of honor, endurance, and inspiration. The men and women around her, some friends, some competitors, looked at her with respect, admiration, and in many cases, awe. The girl they had once laughed at had become a living testament to perseverance and leadership. The commanding officer stepped forward, his voice carrying across the beach. Today, we recognize the recruits who have endured Hell Week and proven themselves capable of embracing the SEAL ethos: courage, perseverance, honor, and commitment. Among you, there are examples of extraordinary strength and leadership that will inspire others for years to come. Lena felt a surge of emotion, her heart beating faster, her chest swelling with pride. She traced her tattoo lightly, silently acknowledging the vow she had carried from her brother's grave to this very moment. As names were called, Lena's was announced. The men and women around her offered congratulations, shaking her hand, nodding in respect, and in some cases, sharing quiet words of admiration. She had earned her place, not just through physical endurance, but through leadership, courage, and an unwavering commitment to her team and her mission. The journey that had begun with mockery and doubt had ended in triumph, respect, and recognition. After the ceremony, Lena stood at the edge of the beach, gazing out at the ocean. Memories flooded back, the icy waves, the grueling obstacle courses, the moments of doubt, and the moments of triumph. She thought of her brother, Miguel Torres, whose memory had guided her through every challenge. The promise she had made to him at his grave had carried her through ridicule, pain, and exhaustion. Now, standing as a SEAL graduate, she realized that she had fulfilled that vow in a way that transcended words. Her fellow recruits began to gather around, sharing stories of their experiences, the moments that had tested them, and the moments that had defined them. Many mentioned Lena, recounting how her guidance, calm under pressure, and unwavering determination had inspired them, kept them moving, and helped them endure. She listened quietly, humbled by their words, knowing that her journey had not only shaped her, but had also left a lasting impact on those around her. Lena's tattoo, once mocked as a symbol of rebellion or arrogance, had become a source of pride and inspiration. It represented not only the promise she had made to Miguel, but also the endurance, courage, and leadership she had demonstrated throughout Hell Week. Every blister, every bruise, every exhausted step across dunes and through waves had contributed to this moment. Her journey had transformed her into a symbol of what it meant to endure, lead, and inspire. Later, in the barracks, Lena reflected on the weeks leading up to Hell Week. She thought of the skepticism she had faced, the laughter of peers, and the whispers of doubt. Each had been a test of more than physical strength. They had been a test of character, resolve, and inner courage. She had endured, not to prove them wrong, but to honor her brother and fulfill her own promise. The victory was deeply personal, yet its impact rippled outward, influencing her peers, instructors, and the team she had led. As the day wore on, Lena received a final acknowledgement from the commanding officer. He placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "Your performance has set a standard. Your courage, leadership, and perseverance will be remembered by this class and those who follow. You have proven yourself in the truest sense of what it means to be a SEAL." Lena nodded, a wave of emotion rising within her. Her body was exhausted, her mind still processing the intensity of the past week, but her heart swelled with pride. The journey had been brutal, but the triumph was complete. That evening, Lena stood alone on the beach, the waves lapping gently at her feet. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. She traced the tattoo on her forearm one final time, letting the memory of her brother, the promise she had carried, and the trials she had endured settle into a profound sense of fulfillment. The tattoo had been more than ink. It had been a guide, a source of strength, and a symbol of her journey. The impact of Hell Week extended beyond the physical challenges she had faced. Lena had grown in ways she could not have imagined, mentally sharper, emotionally stronger, and spiritually more connected to her purpose. The laughter, ridicule, and doubt that had greeted her arrival were replaced with respect, acknowledgement, and admiration. She had transformed not only herself, but also the perceptions of those around her, demonstrating that true strength is measured by perseverance, courage, and the ability to inspire others. In the days that followed, Lena received letters of recognition from instructors, notes from peers expressing gratitude for her leadership, and quiet moments of acknowledgement from the SEAL community. Each message reinforced what she already knew. She had endured, led, and triumphed. Her journey had been challenging, unrelenting, and often brutal, but it had forged her into someone capable of facing any obstacle, both physical and emotional, with courage and determination. As Lena prepared to leave Coronado Beach, ready to embark on the next chapter of her SEAL career, she felt a profound sense of closure and purpose. The tattoo on her forearm glinted in the sunlight, a permanent reminder of the promise she had fulfilled and the trials she had endured. She knew that no matter where her path led, she carried with her the lessons of Hell Week: resilience, leadership, perseverance, and the unbreakable human spirit. Standing on the dunes one last time, Lena looked out at the ocean, the waves a constant reminder of the journey behind her and the challenges yet to come. She inhaled deeply, feeling the cool salt air fill her lungs, and whispered her vow quietly to herself. I have honored you, Miguel. I will carry your memory forward in every mission, every challenge, every triumph. The tattoo, once ridiculed, had become a symbol of courage, determination, and leadership. Lena Torres had endured ridicule, pain, and relentless trials. She had led, inspired, and transformed herself and those around her. She had emerged from Hell Week not just as a survivor, but as a SEA, unbroken, unstoppable, and unwavering in her commitment to honor, courage, and perseverance. As the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, Lena took one last look at the ocean, feeling a sense of completion, pride, and anticipation for the journey ahead. She had survived Hell Week, fulfilled her vow, and earned her place among the elite. Her story would be remembered, not because of the tattoo on her forearm, but because of the courage, resilience, and leadership she had embodied. With her heart full, her mind clear, and her spirit unbroken, Lena Torres stepped forward, ready to face the challenges of the world beyond, carrying with her the lessons, memories, and unyielding strength that Hell Week had forged. The girl they had once laughed at had become a symbol of triumph, a leader, and a testament to the enduring power of courage, perseverance, and the human spirit.